creativity and energy into their writing. So it is my pleasure to talk to her today, and I hope that she will be able to share with you some tips from her work. Leslie, thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
So first, I'd love to talk about your motivation. What got you into this work and to begin with? What motivated you to help people with their writing?
One of my first jobs out of law school was to be a law clerk for a judge. And in that capacity, I was able to review, part of my job was to review all of the motions and papers and briefs that were filed by the attorneys. And I found a huge variation in the quality of the writing. And I also learned how to improve my own writing just from reading and seeing what people did wrong, what people could do better. And I found that I enjoyed the process of figuring out what was wrong with the writing and how it could be improved. So when I saw that I had an opportunity to teach writing at a law school, I took advantage of that. I started off part-time, and then eventually I taught full-time. Legal writing was one of my main subjects that I taught at the law school.
That's a really interesting story. I noticed one thing that you said, there was a huge variation. That was very subtle. You noticed, very subtle. I'd love to hear, what is the number one problem that you see when you talk about variation? What's the number one problem or maybe issue that you see in written work of people who are trying to become better, or even just that you see in general?
An example?
Yes, please.
One of the main problems actually is just organization. I find that if you can get organized in your mind as to how you want to proceed, the points that you want to make, and what order they go in, the paper should be pretty much half written, because figuring out the organization is the main overview kind of thing that you need to do. On a smaller scale, a lot of people think that the way to emphasize points is by putting them in bold or underlining them, as opposed to making the point through your writing.
Yeah. Can you give another example of how would you make a point through your writing that kind of emphasizes a particular point?
Word choice is really important. So one of the things when you're writing, you need to figure out who your audience is and who you're writing for. And you also need to figure out, are you trying to just report something objectively, or are you trying to persuade, for example? So you could have two different sentences saying the same thing in two different ways, and one would be more effective than the other. So for example, you could say, the defendant hit the plaintiff, resulting in his death. Or you could say, the accuser bludgeoned the victim, causing severe trauma and ending in death. So both ways I've given the information that somebody killed somebody else. But if I want to do it very dispassionately, I would say it one way, and if I wanted to arouse the emotions, I would do it the other way.
Interesting. So how would someone know how do they know that you talked about the tools for becoming a good writer is kind of to know your audience, to know what your objective is. What if someone is coming to you and they have no idea what their objective is? We're not talking about a lawyer, but someone who just wants to, I just want to be a better writer. How would you counsel that person to begin? Where would they begin?
Usually if somebody wants to be a better writer, they want to be a better writer for a reason. It's not usually just, I want to be a better writer. Right. So you have to find out, is it work related? Do you want to write a novel? What exactly is it that you want to do? And often people will have an idea of what their weakness is, and they can ask specifically, I need to be better with this particular thing. If someone really has no idea, it's much more difficult, because trying to guide somebody who doesn't know what their goal is very difficult. But sometimes just by working with them and looking at their products, I can figure out, I can kind of get to what the real problem is, even though they haven't been able to identify it themselves.
Wonderful. And how do people find you? I don't know, how would
Well,
people find you?
now that I retired from Golden Gate, so I'm not a professor anymore, but I have a website. It's called Legal Writing Lab. And the website is legalwritinglab.com,
Okay.
and that's how most people find me.
Okay, wonderful. How many of us think that we could use some help with our writing? How many of us think that maybe we want to talk to Leslie for some help with our writing? All right, that's wonderful. Leslie, let's switch gears a little bit. I know that you like to travel and that you teach writing elsewhere in the world. Where would you say your favorite place is that you've taught writing, and could you tell us a little bit about it, please?
Yes, I teach overseas whenever I can, and I typically am called upon to teach either Introduction to American Law or something about American legal writing. And my very favorite experience, I guess you would say, was my very first time that I taught overseas. I taught in Prague at the Charles University back in 2000. And it was wonderful for many reasons, one of which Prague is a beautiful city. It was undiscovered by tourists at that time. It was very inexpensive. But the most rewarding part was that the method of teaching there was so different. The students really loved my method of teaching because there the professors would go into the classroom with a textbook, go to the front of the classroom, open up the textbook and read it. There was no interaction whatsoever with the students. So the students were really excited and thrilled that I actually talked to them and communicated with them and wrote on the blackboard and didn't read from the book. And as a result of that, I made some good friends amongst my students who I'm still friends with today.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, we are essentially at time, but one more question, Leslie. What is one thing that most people would not know about you?
I am a huge true crime aficionado. I am very fascinated by the criminal mind. And I read all kinds of things, including books about profiling and the criminal mind and why people are criminals, but also the whole gory details of the particular crime and how they happened. And I find that all fascinating. And if I had to do my career over again, I would want to be an FBI profiler.
Wow, that is really interesting. Well, everyone, please join me in thanking